Welcome to Frightened Beyond, true crime and horror. In this channel, I bring you real cases that are as haunting as they are true. Stories of trust betrayed, lives lost, and darkness hidden in plain sight. If you're drawn to mysteries that chill your spine and challenge your heart, hit that subscribe button and let's begin. She thought she was walking into a prayer, a quiet temple, a flickering oil lamp, and a woman who spoke like a saint. But within moments, 52-year-old Elizabeth would lie dead at the foot of the shrine, her gold gone, her final prayer never answered. And the woman who led her there, she spoke like a savior, moved like a devotee, but what she believed in was far more dangerous than prayer. It started, like most tragedies do, with hope. Elizabeth, a grandmother desperate to find her missing granddaughter, had come to the temple seeking solace, whispering tearful prayers beneath the low hum of sacred chants. Her eyes were tired, her heart broken. That's when the stranger appeared. A soft-spoken woman in a plain sari, kind eyes, a gentle voice. She offered to pray alongside her, then listened quietly as Elizabeth poured her grief into the air. "I can help," the woman finally said. "There's a ritual, a mandala puja. It's powerful. If your faith is strong, the goddess will hear you." All Elizabeth had to do was show her devotion, come to a holy shrine the next day, dressed in her finest clothes and adorned with every piece of jewelry she owned. Blinded by desperation, Elizabeth agreed. The following evening, she made the journey, never knowing it would be the last. The temple was eerily quiet. Flowers were scattered, incense burned slowly. The woman waited with a calm smile, murmuring prayers. As Elizabeth closed her eyes, the woman handed her a brass cup. "Drink this, and do not open your eyes," she said gently. Elizabeth did as told. Minutes later, she collapsed. By the time anyone arrived, it was over. Her gold was missing. The mysterious woman had vanished. And this was only the beginning. Because Elizabeth's death wasn't a tragedy. It was a pattern, and behind it was someone who believed that cyanide was holier than prayer. In late 2007, a wave of unexplained deaths swept through the outskirts of Bengaluru. One by one, women who had visited temples in search of solace or miracles were found dead under eerie circumstances. There were no signs of struggle, no wounds on their bodies, often nothing at the scene but a half-finished cup of what looked like holy water and perhaps some wilted flowers. These women came from different walks of life, but all shared one thing. They had been yearning for help and thought they'd found it in a friendly stranger. In each case, by the time help arrived, the victim was already beyond saving. Local authorities were baffled. Initially, a few of these cases were chalked up as unnatural deaths or even freak accidents. After all, who would suspect murder in a sacred place of worship? But as the number of bodies grew, chilling patterns emerged. A devout 60-year-old asthma sufferer attended a promised healing ritual, only to be discovered lifeless shortly after. A humble village woman who loved to sing devotional hymns went to meet someone offering her a chance to sing at a special ceremony. She never returned home. A respected 60-year-old temple priest, honored by her community, excitedly accepted a patron's offer to fund a new arch for the temple. But that meeting at the shrine ended with her sudden demise, and a 30-year-old homemaker named Nagaveni, who had struggled for years to conceive a child, put her faith in a godly woman who claimed a ritual could bless her with a baby boy. Heartbreakingly, Nagaveni was found dead in a lodge near a temple on December 18, 2007. In each case, witnesses recalled seeing the victim last in the company of a friendly, middle-aged woman who offered spiritual help. Each time, that would-be helper vanished without a trace once the deed was done. As news of these deaths spread, panic gripped the community. Temples, once seen as safe havens of peace, now became scenes of dread for many. Devotees whispered among themselves. Was there a curse, an evil spirit haunting holy grounds, or was a predator lurking among the worshippers? Families of the victims noticed another disturbing detail that pointed to foul play. The women's jewelry and valuables were missing from their bodies. Those cherished pieces of gold and adornment, which devout Hindus often wear to temple as a sign of reverence, had vanished. This was no coincidence or divine curse. It was starting to look like calculated murder and theft. Someone was targeting vulnerable women at their most faithful moments and doing it with lethal precision. As mysterious deaths of temple-going women continued to rise, public fear grew. Women, especially those in distress, became wary of help, even from fellow devotees. Each death seemed sudden, with no struggle, no witnesses, and no CCTV. Only later did autopsies reveal the silent killer, cyanide. But by then, bodies were too decomposed, and leads had vanished. Most cases were quietly shelved, until one sharp-eyed officer, Inspector S.K. Umesh, read a news article about a woman named Yashodhama found dead after a temple visit. Something about the case echoed others. He dug deeper, and patterns emerged. Older women, all vulnerable, all poisoned after meeting someone near a temple. The killer's method became chillingly clear. Gain trust, lure the victim with promises of divine rituals, then strike in private, leaving only grief behind. 'Twas murder, disguised as mercy. Then came a break. Umesh traced suspicious phone calls to Yashodhama from a number linked to a stolen phone taken from a flower seller near a temple. Whoever used it had swapped SIMs and tried to vanish. But the device pinged one last time near Hoskote, linked to a cab driver who had been contacted by a strange woman. She asked to meet at Bengaluru's central bus terminal. Sensing a trap had been set, the police prepared to spring one of their own. Before dawn, one day, around New Year 2008, plainclothes officers took their positions around the bustling Bangalore bus stand. The air was cool and thick with diesel fumes as buses rumbled in and out, carrying pilgrims and workers alike. The cab driver, now cooperating with authorities, stood nervously by a tea stall, awaiting the rendezvous under police instruction. As the city stirred awake, a lone woman approached through the morning haze. She appeared unremarkable, of average build, dressed in a traditional salwar kameez with a modest shawl. In one hand, she clutched a cloth handbag. Her eyes scanned the crowd warily. The driver gave a subtle nod, confirming this was the woman who had called him. In that tense moment, officers moved in swiftly. Police surrounded the woman and took her into custody, catching her completely off guard. Bystanders looked on in confusion as this ordinary-looking lady was led away, protesting loudly that there must be some mistake. At first, even the police weren't entirely sure what they had. Was this really the predator they'd been hunting, or just a petty thief? The answer came when they opened the woman's bag. Inside were gold jewelry, handfuls of cash, and a small container of white crystalline powder. The officers felt their hearts skip a beat. The white powder was quickly identified as cyanide, the deadly poison. Among the jewelry were distinctive pieces, later confirmed to belong to one of the temple death victims. It was a damning find. In that instant, the kindly temple lady transformed into the cold-hearted killer in the eyes of investigators. They realized they had finally caught the person responsible for the string of cyanide murders. After nearly a decade of evading suspicion, the faceless killer now had a face, and soon a name. Under intense questioning, the woman eventually began to speak, her piety mask slipping. She tried to feign ignorance, then spun tales to mislead the police. But, confronted with the evidence in her bag, she ultimately confessed to multiple killings. The truth unraveled like a dark tapestry. This unassuming middle-aged woman was, indeed, the mastermind who preyed on devout, defenseless victims. Her arrest sent shockwaves through the community and made headlines nationwide. For the detectives who had worked tirelessly on the case, it was a moment of triumph and disbelief. The murderer they'd imagined could have been a shadowy priest, or a gang of robbers turned out to be a lone woman, blending in seamlessly with temple-goers. And now that woman sat in custody, staring blankly as the weight of her crimes caught up to her. The hunt was over, and the mystery was finally solved. The woman revealed her name, K.D. Kempamma, though she had many aliases. Among them was Mallika, the name she happened to use while registering at a lodge during her final crime. It was under the moniker Mallika that she would soon become infamous. Once the media learned of her methods, they dubbed her Cyanide Mallika, a nickname that would send shivers down spines across India. As details of her identity and past spilled out, the public was astonished. Kempamma did not fit the typical image of a serial killer. She was a 38-year-old mother of 3, India's first known convicted female serial killer. How did an ordinary woman come to commit such extraordinary evil? Investigators digging into Kempamma's history uncovered a tale of desperation, deceit, and ruthlessness. She hailed from a small village called Kagalipura near Bengaluru, and early in life she hadn't shown signs of violence. In fact, she married a tailor and tried to live a regular life. But in the late 1990s, her fortunes took a downturn. She attempted to run a chit fund savings scheme business, which failed disastrously, plunging her into debt. Creditors were knocking at her door, and her husband, fed up and ashamed, abandoned her around 1998. Suddenly, Kempamma found herself penniless, desperate, and solely responsible for her children. Survival became a struggle. She worked odd jobs as a domestic servant, a cook, even briefly with a goldsmith, but it never brought in enough money. During those years, she also had her first brush with crime. She was caught stealing jewelry from an employer's house and spent 6 months in jail in 2001. It was around this time that a dangerous idea took root. Working with a goldsmith had taught her about cyanide, a chemical used to clean and polish gold. She learned how lethally potent a few grains of that white powder could be. According to later accounts, she even claimed she got tips from watching movies about poisoning. Kempamma emerged from jail, a woman with a singular, grim resolve. She would turn her misfortune into profit by any means necessary, even murder. Beginning in 1999, Kempamma haunted temple grounds, not to pray, but to hunt. She targeted women in emotional distress, weeping during rituals, praying alone. With soft words and a warm smile, she introduced herself as a God-fearing sister, someone who knew sacred rituals that could fix anything: broken marriages, family feuds, debt. Her gender and gentle demeanor disarmed every victim. The setup was always the same. She'd offer tea, ask about their troubles, then suggest a special puja that needed privacy and complete trust. Victims were told to wear their finest jewelry as a sign of respect, but that meant they carried everything of value. In a quiet shrine, she'd hand them holy water or sweet prasad, laced with cyanide. As they prayed, she poured the poison down their throats, even pinching their noses shut to ensure they swallowed. Within seconds, it was over. And while they lay dying, Kempamma stripped them of gold and cash, vanishing before anyone noticed. By the time she was caught, Kempamma had confessed to 6 murders, but investigators linked her to many more. Families came forward, recalling her presence near their loved ones just before they died. Some believe she may have killed over 20 women. In 2010, she became the first woman in Karnataka sentenced to death. Another followed, but both were later commuted to life in prison. Today, she remains behind bars, older, quiet, still projecting the calm of a woman who once posed as a spiritual savior. But even in prison, people keep their distance. Cyanide Mallika had a way of getting close, too close, before anyone realized the danger. The shock of a female serial killer who exploited the sacred trust of temples left a lasting scar on the public psyche. Many who hear of Cyanide Mallika's crimes still find it hard to comprehend how someone who appeared so devout could be so deceitful and cruel. Her case has been recounted in books, podcasts, and even a feature film as people struggle to understand what drove an ordinary woman to become a mass murderer. In the end, Kempamma herself gave a simple motive: greed. She wanted money and thought she had found the perfect crime. She once coolly told investigators that cyanide was the ideal weapon, easy to obtain from goldsmith shops and capable of killing in seconds without a trace. She showed little remorse for her victims, repeatedly misleading police and feigning innocence until the evidence overwhelmed her. It's a haunting reminder that sometimes the monsters who walk among us wear the most unexpected faces. The story of Cyanide Mallika is more than a crime. It's a chilling reminder of what happens when trust is weaponized. Each of her victims wasn't foolish. They were simply human, desperate, hopeful, and searching for answers in sacred places. Kempamma offered comfort. She spoke like a sister in faith, but behind the soft words was cold intent. She didn't just kill. She betrayed something deeper: belief. The case exposed a harsh truth. Evil doesn't always arrive with blood on its hands. Sometimes it kneels beside you in prayer. But justice, though delayed, did arrive. Thanks to investigators like Inspector Umesh, who refused to ignore his instincts, the mask came off. In a world where serial killers are often imagined as men, this case forced law enforcement to question assumptions. Evidence, not prejudice, guided the way. For all of us, this story is a wake-up call. Faith should never demand your gold. Kindness should never be conditional. And those who offer miracles must be held accountable. Though we mourn the lives lost, we also find closure in knowing the killer was unmasked. A woman who walked among temples, hiding behind piety, now spends her life behind bars. From grief comes caution, from tragedy truth. And maybe that's the final lesson. Trust, but never without reason. Believe, but never without discernment. Because sometimes, even in a temple, the real danger is the one offering to save you. In the end, the saga of Cyanide Mallika leaves us with a mix of gratitude and grief. Gratitude that a ruthless killer was finally unmasked and stopped, and grief for the innocent lives lost in the guise of devotion. It reinforces an age-old lesson. Not everyone who walks into a temple comes with pure intentions. Trust is sacred, and when someone abuses it so cynically, it scars entire communities. Yet from that pain, we learn to be more careful, to watch out for one another, and to cherish the genuine helpers in our lives. The story that began with a devout stranger's deadly deceit concludes with a community's resolve to never let such darkness take root again. Thank you for joining me in today's story. Drop a heart or a comment as a prayer for all the lives affected by this case. Until next one, stay safe.